Good evening. I am happy to report that Senator Murray and I have reached an agreement. We've been talking all year, and this week that hard work of the two of us sitting down and talking to each other all year has paid off. First, it started because we passed budgets, and Senator Murray deserves credit for passing a budget through the Senate. That got the ball rolling so that the two of us started talking. And the reason we're here tonight is to explain what we've agreed to. This bill reduces the deficit by $23 billion, and it does not raise taxes, and it cuts spending in a smarter way. From the outset, we knew that if we forced each other to compromise a core principle, we would get nowhere. That is why we decided to focus on where the common ground is. So that's what we've done. That means to me a budget agreement that reduces the deficit without raising taxes and replaces some of the arbitrary across-the-board spending cuts with smarter, permanent reforms that pay for this relief. The House budget reflects our ultimate goals. It balances the budget within 10 years, it pays off the debt, but I realize that that is not going to pass in this divided government. I see this agreement as a step in the right direction. Instead of the arbitrary cuts, we make smart, targeted reforms. We eliminate waste. We stop sending checks to criminals. We cut corporate welfare. We reform some mandatory programs. And we start to make real reforms to these autopilot programs that are the drivers of our debt in the first place. I think this agreement is a clear improvement on the status quo. This agreement makes sure that we don't have a government shutdown scenario in January. It makes sure that we don't have another government shutdown scenario in October. It makes sure that we don't lurch from crisis to crisis. It also allows Congress to finally exercise the power of the purse. We're both from the legislative branch. The Constitution says that the legislative branch should exercise the power of the purse. We want to reclaim that from the administration instead of having all of these continuing resolutions. This also shows that we can work together to get our government functioning at its very basic levels. That, we think, is a step in the right direction. That, we think, gives us some confidence. That brings some normalcy back to our government. I want to take a moment to thank Senator Murray. She's a tough and honest negotiator. She's fought hard for her principles every step of the way, and I want to commend her for her hard work. All of the summary documents and the legislation will be placed upon our budget websites by the end of the night. And with that, I'd like to offer Senator Murray.
Thank you. Well, for far too long here in Washington, D.C., compromise has been considered a dirty word, especially when it comes to the federal budget. Over the past few years, we have lurched from crisis to crisis and from one cliff to the next. And when one countdown clock was stopped, it wasn't too long before the next one got started. That uncertainty was devastating to our fragile economic recovery. The constant crisis cost us billions of dollars in lost growth and jobs, and the continued across-the-board cuts from sequestration were forcing our families and communities to pay the price. So I am very proud to stand here today with Chairman Ryan to announce we have broken through the partisanship and the gridlock and reached a bipartisan budget compromise that will prevent a government shutdown in January. Our deal puts jobs and economic growth first by rolling back sequestration's harmful cuts to education and medical research and infrastructure investments and defense jobs for the next 2 years. Now, I know there were some people who thought these cuts should continue, but I'm glad that we increased these key domestic investments and that we averted the next round of scheduled cuts to military programs, bases, and defense jobs in our country. This deal builds on the $2.5 trillion in deficit reduction we have done since 2011 and continues the precedent that we set in the fiscal cliff deal that sequestration shouldn't be replaced with spending cuts alone. This bipartisan deal will help millions of Americans who are wondering if they were going to keep paying the price for D.C. dysfunction. From the workers at our military bases and construction projects who were furloughed or laid off, to the kids who lost their slots in Head Start programs, to the seniors wondering if they were going to have Meals on Wheels, to the families who are praying for halted medical research programs to get back to work on a cure, and so much more. Because of this deal, the budget process can now stop lurching from crisis to crisis. By setting bipartisan spending levels for the next 2 years, this deal allows congressional committees to proceed under regular order and gives government agencies and the companies that do business with them the certainty they need to hire workers and make investments. This isn't the plan I would have written on my own. I'm pretty sure that Chairman Ryan wouldn't have written it on his own. And there are obviously differences between our parties when it comes to our budget values and priorities. I was disappointed that we weren't able to close even a single corporate tax loophole. I know many Republicans had hoped this would be an opportunity to make some of the kinds of changes to Medicare and Social Security they've advocated for. But Congressman Ryan have set aside our differences. We've made some compromises, and we've worked together to get something done. Now, this deal doesn't solve every issue in front of Congress. We made a conscious decision, as Chairman Ryan said, in the few short weeks we have had, to focus on where we can agree and not get bogged down in the larger issues that, while important, are not going to get solved right now. But we need to acknowledge that our nation has serious long-term fiscal and economic challenges this deal doesn't address, and our budget process has been broken. Many people believe that Congress is broken. We have spent years scrambling to fix artificial crises while our debt piles up and the economic foundation middle-class families have depended on for generations continues to crumble. We have budget deficits that have improved, but they have not disappeared, and we have deficits in education and innovation and infrastructure that continue to widen. We know we need comprehensive tax reform. We need comprehensive immigration reform. There is a lot more for Congress to do. So this deal doesn't solve all of our problems, but I think it is an important step in helping to heal some of the wounds here in Congress, to rebuild some trust and show that we can do something without a crisis right around the corner, and demonstrate the value in making our government work for the people we represent. So when all this is done, I am very proud to stand with Chairman Ryan or anyone else who wants to work on this bipartisan foundation to continue addressing our nation's challenges. Nothing is easy here, but I know the American people expect nothing less. I want to take a minute to especially thank Chairman Ryan. He and I do have some major differences. We cheer for a different football team, clearly. We catch different fish. We have some differences on policies. But we agree that our country needs some certainty, and they need to show that we can work together. And I've been very proud to work with him. I also want to thank Congressman Van Hollen, who's worked very hard to help make sure this deal reflects the values that he cares a lot about, and all of our Budget Conference Committee. Everyone who's been involved on the committee has been very hard working with us to get to this deal. So I'm hopeful now that we can get this bipartisan deal through the House and then through the Senate, and get home in time for the holidays that I think everybody deserves this year.